Hello, welcome back to Books Recommended by You. Today we're talking about one of my absolute favorite subgenres, I guess, and that is adult fantasies. We don't go the same places that we used to. I've asked you guys on Instagram what are the best of the best, pick only one, suggest only one adult fantasy book that you think everyone should read, and boy did you guys deliver. I originally tried to narrow this down to top 15, same as I did with my thriller recommendations by You. I will link that down below if you have not actually seen it and you would like to get some thriller recommendations. But boy, did I even struggle enough to narrow it down to 20, so 20 it is. I picked the ones that were the most recommended, so a lot of these you probably will have heard of, depending how much you read within this genre. Nevertheless, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You know, little old me can only read as many books in my lifetime, and I think listening to the community and their recommendations is really cool. So I'll go through the list again in a random order, letting you know what the Goodreads rating is and what the book is about. Because there's 20, I'll try to be brief, but if anything piques your interest, I will leave the links to the Goodreads pages of these books that I've mentioned down below, so you can go and check out a bit more about it. A little ad break just before we move on, because whilst my content is free, food isn't. But also because Skillshare is cool, which is today's sponsor. Skillshare is an online learning community where creatives teach other people who want to learn within those skills. I love how it's interactive, and it definitely feels like your peers are teaching you rather than like, you know, when you were sitting at school. There's pretty much everything on the table there. There's business, there's filmmaking and videography, there's web designing and web development, from animation to marketing, pretty much everything. But since it's November and it's NaNoWriMo, if you are writing, good luck to you. There's also a lot of workshops for writing, which I think is really fitting. Lots of the classes now also include a little practical side of them, so there are exercises that you can do alongside. One class in particular that actually is not related to NaNoWriMo at all that I want to mention is this one about the plants. It's called Plants at Home, Uplift Your Spirit and Your Space, and honestly, it's such a feel-good class. If it were up to me and my cats wouldn't eat the plants, I would literally surround myself with greenery and just live a happy life. I just thought I'll mention this class because if you are going to use the free access trial, I thought you should know that this class exists. Skillshare is an affordable platform. If you select an annual membership, it is under $10 per month, but the first 1,000 people that will click the link down below can get access to a premium membership for free, so you can test everything out without commitment. And thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. A couple of mentions that obviously came up a lot in the answers, but because the spots were so limited, I thought I'm just gonna give them a little mention because I'm sure you guys have heard of them. It's the likes of Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, and The Witcher. And I feel like because these particular fantasies already have adaptations, I think that most people will probably have seen it. It's a harsh competition here. Did not want to use one of those spots for these, but nonetheless I will link them down below if you want to check them out. So let's get into it. Again, no particular order, but here we go. It's Kings of the Wild. This one Goodreads has 4.3 stars. Actually, a lot of these, most of these books have a 4 and above rating, which for me on Goodreads is really good. But Kings of the Wild really resembles a D&D campaign, especially, like, at least I thought, because I have read this. There's a party of people who used to be these legendary fighters and legendary adventurers that are now past their prime, let's say, and they are kind of retired and settled down, but something happens. One of the characters' daughter gets stuck in a besieged city, and the band must gather back together to go on a mission and go on an adventure to reach her, hopefully safely, even though it does seem like it is a mission destined to fail. Logan has also read this and actually really liked it. I liked it a bit less because I was so incredibly invested in this for the first half of it, but then the second half kind of felt extremely repetitive. But if you go into it with the notion that it is like a D&D story and it's definitely like very action-packed, it does focus on the characters at the beginning a bit more, which I think is why I liked it more. I was very emotionally invested, but over time it definitely dwindled down a little bit. But I know I am in the minority of this, so I think this fantasy is very good for those who love the kind of D&D adventure books with a very good strong dash of humor as well, so that was definitely enjoyable. Assassin's Apprentice. The average star rating is 4.15 for this one. It seems to follow a royal bastard that has a secret ability called the Wit, which allows him to communicate with the animals. However, this ability apparently is not very liked by those in power, I guess? I have not read this one. But from what I understood from a synopsis, our main character then gets accepted by the royals and is training to become an assassin. However, his power, the Wit, also has to be hidden because, again, it's just like kind of unbecoming. It has to be replaced by more courtly lessons and things. And it seems to be a story about becoming a royal assassin. And I really need to get on it and read it. I just have this bad habit of forgetting what books are on my Kindle. Now this one came up so very often in the answers, and that's Nevernight. Nevernight is a story about Mia who loses everything at the very beginning of the book and is now on a lifelong mission of revenge. She wants to avenge her family that have been murdered, and in the very mysterious circumstances devotes her life to getting into this assassin school. I remember when I first read it, to me it reminded of Dark Brotherhood questline in Skyrim, if you played it, and I really enjoyed it. My love for the series kind of simmered down a little bit since I began, and I still haven't read the third book, which is a bit of a shame, but I keep delaying it because the writing style, as a lot of reviews I think point out, is very particular. It's quite wordy. It's definitely not easy. I think especially if you are someone whose English is a second language like myself, it's not the easiest read to read. Not everyone vibes with his writing style. However, if you give it a go, I think within the first 30 pages you'll see what I mean and you'll know if it's for you or not. It has a 4.24 star rating, very beloved by many people. Another book, and actually another author that appeared in the recommendations so often, is Brandon Sanderson, and specifically the Stormlight Archive. This is a series that is still ongoing and is actually releasing Rhythm of War, which is the 4th book in the series this month, a little bit later this month. Very highly anticipated by a lot of people who are into adult fantasy, but equally, this is kind of cheating I guess, but equally the Mistborn was also recommended a lot, so that just kind of extended it. Brandon Sanderson, I'd say if you have not read anything by him, definitely start with Mistborn. I would highly recommend not starting with this one. Personally, that's what I personally think. I just think the Stormlight is, and it takes substantially longer to get into compared to the Mistborn series, and it might just be easier if you're new to Sanderson to start there, but you might disagree. I don't know. I'm not very far into this series at all, so it's very hard for me to kind of explain what this is, but it is an epic story, so there's so many parts of it and there's so many POVs. In this world is a leftover of very mighty beings. There are shard blades and shard plates. One is armor, one is, you know, weapons. They make an ordinary, or they can make an ordinary human almost invincible. So you can imagine that over time, to acquire these pieces, there is a lot of tension between different cultures and kingdoms. On the back it says, one such war is about to swallow up a soldier, a bright lord, and a young woman scholar. So I can't really tell you, like an overarching plot of that, but war. A lot of war. Very epic fantasy, definitely. I wouldn't say for the beginners, at least in my opinion. A lot of close people in my life have this as their ultimate favorite series, so something to look forward to. Oh, sorry, the Stormlight also, by the way, has 4.63 stars, which is incredibly high for a first book in a series especially, and with so many reviews. The Lives of Lamora has 4.27 average, and this is about an orphan named Locke, which apparently is not a lake, as someone who lives in Scotland thought for a little while, but let's not focus on that detail because it's a bit embarrassing. And Locke is a very skilled con artist slash thief that can fool the best of the best, the smartest, the most influential people there, including the ruler. However, someone is lurking in the shadows, and I think Locke is about to find a true match to him. All I know is that this is supposed to be a really good, fun, and entertaining heist story, and I think as far as heist-based stories, this is definitely one that stands out and adult fantasy, and it came up in your recommendations a hell of a lot as well. Night Circus, that I apparently forgot to grab from my shelves and now don't want to stand up. The average rating is just above 4 stars, it's 403, and Night Circus is actually about a mysterious circus that appears in random places with no notice, and it's extremely magical and it's mysterious and a whole vibe. If I could visit a certain event from any book, it likely would go here, which, by the way, this book in my mind stands out as something that was very, very rich atmosphere. So if you're an atmospheric reader and you would like something magical and mystical, I would highly recommend The Night Circus. Her writing style is definitely not for everyone and it's pretty whimsy in this occasion, so keep that in mind. But we follow two rivals, competitors, two circus performers or magicians that are actually raised by two rival magician teachers. As we explore the circus, we also explore the characters, trying to figure out if the way that they were raised was maybe not the healthiest, and also discover themselves a little bit more. And ooh, there's a lot that happens. There's a lot that happens, but also this is a very slow book, so I just want to preface that as well. City of Brass, and this one has a 4.11 average rating, which again is super good. City of Brass is a story about Nari, who is a girl that thought the magic was a con, especially since she kind of used it as a con to get money from those who had plenty to give, and she took it for herself because she kind of has nothing. However, one day she very much is proven wrong when she stumbled across a Jinn or Deva from a long time ago and gets kind of swept away from all that she knows, but since she didn't have a lot, that's fine, you know, like how books go. She gets taken away into this completely segregated place that's full of magic, and apparently she actually has a role to play in all of this, and she just did not really know who she was prior to being discovered by this Jinn. This is considered to be an entry-level adult fantasy. All that means is that it kind of swims in both YA and adult circles as far as the audience is concerned, so there's a little bit of overlap. It's definitely easier to read. It has some tropes that are pretty standard for YA, so if you're looking for kind of like a bridge, this is one of the books that would be great for that. I have another one later on, I think, but this one is definitely also good to start with. Then we have The Name of the Wind, which, yes, is my favorite. However, I kind of stopped saying that recently because it's been so long since I reread this, and I don't know if it would still hold up. However, it will always have a special place in my heart because it took me out of a very, very long reading slump, and is the reason why I'm on this channel now, because I read this book and I was really obsessed with books and rediscovered my love for reading. The Name of the Wind has a very, very high rating, currently at 4.53. I feel like I need to say though, we don't know when the third book is going to come out. So if you are one of those people who does not like to start a series without knowing when you can finish it, currently this is not for you. But if you do want to still check it out, because I feel like especially the first book could be read on its own. Like, sure, it doesn't conclude the story, but I thought it was worth the read. The story follows Quoth, and we kind of have him in two places. The first place is where the story is being told, and that actually means that each book is just a day of this adult Quoth telling his life story to a person who's writing it down. So this book is day one. You can kind of forget about it because it's only at the very beginning and the very end that we are back in this inn. However, I mentioned this specifically because some people really cannot stand Quoth because he's very arrogant and I understand that. But I think it's important to remember that it is told by him, so he's making himself look better. So it's a little bit of an unreliable narrator as well, which I like in general. I don't think people usually say that, I could be wrong, but I also kind of think that this could be a good bridge from YA to adult fantasy. I think perhaps because it has a magical school setting, but instead of magical school, it has magical university, and oh my god, I loved being there so much. I really need to reread this bloody book. I'm just afraid I'll love it less now that I I'm a bit more seasoned, I guess. Start the story from when he was little and with all of the misfortunes that followed him, which is really sad. And it might be a bit of a slow start, but if you push through, I promise the university is coming. And oh, I really enjoyed it. I will mention though, there are not many great female characters in this. You know, you can acknowledge things and still enjoy stuff, so that was the case for me in this one. And I was happy to see that there's a lot of recommendations for The Name of the Wind and your responses, so it just made me a little happy. The next one got a couple, and that is actually my current read, which is The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is actually quite a unique adult book, I guess, because it is, I think, rightfully described as a middle grade book for adults. It's very whimsy. It's the way that people are named, the way that things are described feels very middle grade-ish. However, we have themes and people just being rude in the way that only adults can relate to, and like the grind of a 9 to 5 and just the bleak reality of, you know, understanding how average you are. But it's all about this guy that works for the department in charge of magical youth, and he works cases and he checks that the kids at the orphanages are safe from themselves and to others, and he's sent on this very secret mission to one that no one knows. It's like an off the books basically orphanage that is in the Cerulean Sea, and he's to inspect stuff there. And pretty sure this has a male-male romance as well. Not there yet, but pretty sure I've heard that. So a very interesting, not YA to adult transition, but possibly either middle grade to adult book or adult to middle grade, or just like if you're in the mood for something sweet and wholesome, relatable in the most bizarre sense. Could be a good shout. Cloud Road. This follows the main character called Moon, who is a shapeshifter, however has to hide this. While he's trying to blend in amongst the tribes of his valley, someone at some point comes across him and they are also a shapeshifter, and now they are offering him a safe space, a safe community where he will never have to hide. However, while accepting this, Moon was not aware that there's going to be a massive power shift and that he will have to defend those he loves most, or at least that's what I got from the synopsis. Could be a bit wrong. Have not read this one yet, and this one has a tiny bit of a lower rating, but it's still a pretty high rating. It's 3.97. Next up, ow, Priory of the Orange Tree. Thing has a female-female relationship, which again a little bit rarer, at least in the fantasy, so we love to see that. It has the average rating of 4.16. I don't know too much about this, but I do know that this is a multi-kingdom perspective book. It says, a world divided, a queendom without an heir, an ancient enemy awakens. It's actually a standalone, which is like almost like a lone standalone in the Sea of series. But that being said, it is so big that it could be 3 books either way. But if you want something really epic and that is not really a commitment because it's a standalone, then we have The Blade itself. This one also has 4.16 rating. I have not read this one personally yet, and apparently we have quite a crew that also a little bit resembled to me whilst reading the synopsis, D&D campaign. So we have a feisty barbarian nobleman officer, cripple turned torturer inquisitor, and a wizard with a bad temper. And then it says, murderous conspiracies rise to the surface, old scores are ready to be settled, and the line between hero and villain is sharp enough to draw blood. So I've been meaning to read this one for so long now, and I'm really excited to get to it. I've heard really good things about it, and I don't know if you have read it. Let me know if it does have this kind of like Dungeons and Dragons vibe, or am I completely off? But that one was recommended quite a bit as well. Another super highly anticipated read by myself is The Poppy War. So this is an Asian fantasy, and our main character Ren surprises everyone, including herself and her tutor, when she, an orphan, sits an exam that is extremely like really basically only the elite pass, and usually those would, you know, means for private education and such, which she does not have. But she passes. However, when she goes to wherever she goes after that, She's actually met with a lot of hostility because of her skin color. She is of a darker skin color, her gender, and also her, you know, economic status. However, while she's resisting all of these people being basically dicks, she discovers that she possesses a lethal, unearthly power, an aptitude for the nearly mythical art of shamanism. Exploring the depths of her gift with the help of a seemingly insane teacher and psychoactive substances. The seemingly insane tutor reminds me of one of the lecturers or professors in The Name of the Wind, who was pretty much my favorite character, so I'm extremely excited to get to this at some point. Jade City. This is kind of more so rival gangs. It's described as a Godfather vibe, so if you're looking for that, which sounds really unique in the fantasy genre, I'm not quite sure where the fantasy element comes in actually. Jade is the lifeblood of the city of Janloon, a stone that embraces a warrior's natural strength and speed. It is mined, traded, stolen, and killed for, all controlled by two families equal in their power and ruthlessness. When a modern drug emerges that allows anyone, even foreigners, to wield Jade, simmering tension between the two clans erupts into the war. Into open war. Very tight. Okay, next one. Rage of Dragons. This one with 4.38 average rating. The Rage of Dragons is an African epic fantasy. And in this world we have people who are gifted with a very, very rare gift of basically hulking out, going extremely strong and powerful and becoming a machine. And a lot of the value is put onto people being able to fight. And then we have our main character, Tao, who has a sneaky plan of retiring early through some sort of minor or to medium injury and then settling with his family. However, his family actually gets murdered and his whole life is flipped upside down, and now he is dedicated more so than ever to become actually really, really strong and going after those three people that have caused this. I know that there's a lot of fight scenes. If you love that, and if you would like to read a fantasy that is set in Africa, this could be a really good shout. I know I have some friends that really love this series. Fight scenes are just not my jam, but I really want to read this, so I might give it a go. And just hope for the best, but it has very, very good reviews, very promising fantasy series. Next up, Crescent City. This is, I think, Sarah J. Maas's first adult fantasy. The average is actually at 4.43. Hello, Zeus. From what I read in the synopsis, it sounds like this is about the main character, Bryce, who lives coveted, you know, work hard, play hard life, if that's something you'd like. I don't know. It was pitched as like a perfect life, but I don't know, debatable. So she's kind of like a party girl, and until one day her life again is turned upside down and she loses her best friend who was killed by a demon. Now she's on this hunt with a character called Hunt for this demon, and I think she offers Hunt, who is a fallen angel, an opportunity to get closer to obtaining his freedom. So they're both on the hunt for this demon, and they, I think, come across of something much darker. This is, again, quite a chonker. However, if the other books are anything to go by, it shouldn't be difficult to read. It's just more so the amount of pages that this book holds. I've heard that it definitely picks up more so in the second half, so if you did grab this and are struggling at the beginning, I would suggest trying to push through, but you know, on this channel we're all for DNFing something you don't like. And Crescent City actually came up a lot, even though it is a fairly new release as well. Another recommendation by you guys is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. This one is at a 4.38. So apparently it's about English magicians who were really known as one of the most powerful people on Earth. However, fast forward to 1800s and all of the magicians don't really have powers anymore. They're kind of just more so, you know, writing stuff down. And we follow Jonathan Strange, who apparently is kind of like a archiver, librarian, and I think a magician. I was a bit confused. I have not read this one. I was a bit confused because it says that he goes then to London to raise someone from the dead, but I thought that he doesn't have the power, so I'm tiny bit confused. If you have read this, let me know what's up with that. And then he's kind of put on to help in the war against Napoleon, and then he meets, and then all is well and good until he meets someone else called Mr. Norrell, and I think their ideas about magicians and what sort of powers are okay differ. I'm not quite sure what the overarching plot for that is, but I think it probably focuses a lot about on their relationship. I don't know if there's anything romantic or not. I have heard of this book being recommended for those who love The Name of the Winds, so my interest was piqued a while back, and then I kind of forgot. So if you think that I would love this, let me know. Only 2 left now. So we have Darkest Shade of Magic, probably the most known kind of bridge from YA to adult. It's a story about doors and doors being opened that should have remained closed. We are following Kel, who is an Atari to Red London. There are 4 Londons in total. Black London, that is closed because of the horrible magic accident that happened ages ago. White London, who is a very poorly magical London. The people there are just miserable. Red London, where Kel lives, which is super magical, and Grey London, which is our London. Kel is one of the few left people who can actually open doors between the Londons, and so that's his official job, but though unofficially he has this little flaw where he likes to take trinkets and collect things from different places, and that is extremely against the law. One of the trinkets is something that really should not be moved, and it opens a lot of shenanigans, so definitely a good place to start if you haven't already, although I think a lot of you guys would have read this already, but if you haven't, a great place to start. The writing style is extremely easy to read. This is one of the least scary fantasy books to pick up. First of all, the first one is actually like reasonably sized, which, by the way, you probably have noticed a lot of fantasies are just like really big. It's just like a thing they do. The second book, not everyone loved, but the third book was one of my favorite books, especially by this authors. And then the last but not the least, because again, random order, we have Houndry Side. This has a 4.25 rating. So our main character is put on a job that is actually fairly easy for her. So she's a thief, similar to what we have with Lamora. And she's put on this job that seems pretty normal to her, definitely nothing too challenging. However, what she does not know is that her target is an artifact that could tip the scales in the power dynamic, and also, what was it? Revolutionize the magical technology known as scribing, the art of using coded commands to imbue everyday objects with sentience, which is so cool. So this is kind of verging a little bit on sci-fi, I guess, but it was classed under fantasy, so I counted it, and I really want to read this at some point. It says, now someone wants her dead to have a chance at surviving and at stopping the deadly transformation that's underway. Main character will have to marshal unlikely allies, learn to harness the artifact's power for herself, and undergo her own transformation, one that will turn her into something that she never have imagined. And that sounds cool. Oh, I don't know why I'm closing this. I think there are so many great selections for anyone's taste, and if you were looking for something and some of these recommendations useful, please let me know, because I'm sure that people who ended up recommending this would also love to know. Personally, I don't think there's anything more heartwarming than people saying that they read something because of you and they loved it. I will be continuing doing this. I already have some horror stuff recommended to me, but let me know what other genres you would like me to ask people for recommendations, and I'll get on it. So thank you so much for watching. If you have another favorite that was not mentioned, which there were a lot, by the way, I might make a part 2 here at some point, I'm not sure. But if you have another favorite and you would like for it to receive some love, definitely leave a comment. Thank you guys so much for recommending books to fellow readers. Hope you enjoyed this. Stay awesome, stay kind, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!